Hello everyone. Today we are going to be talking about the past simple in English. Now, this is the most basic way to talk about the past in English, and it is also worth noting that it can be called simple past. So you will see both of these terms being utilized, okay? Now, when I say the most basic way to talk about the past, I am speaking generally because, of course, there are other forms of the past tense, like the past progressive and the past perfect, right? But 9 times out of 10, when we want to talk about the past, we are going to use the past simple. So let's see how the past simple is used, okay? And when you look at the uses, you then understand what I mean when I say generally, right? So it is used to talk about completed actions. Well, obviously, if you're talking about the past tense, then it has to be used to talk about a completed action, right? It can be a single action or a series of actions. The students watched the match. So this is past tense. But what you need to realize is that there is no mention of time. So we do not know when this actually took place. But we know based on the fact that the past simple is used, which I have the verb underlined. We know that because we use the past simple, it took place in the past. It could have taken place yesterday, 2 days ago, or even last year. But the point is it took place in the past. So this means that we don't always have to mention the time, right? If we were having a conversation and I said this, it would be obvious based on the context when this, it would be obvious, the time would be obvious because it would be already understood, right? So this sentence, because it's in isolation, you would not know when it took place, right? So you don't always have to mention the time once it is already understood when the action occurred. So the students watched the match. That means that was a single action that was completed in the past, right? Now, in this example, we actually mentioned the time. Last night, I called my wife, made my dinner, and then went to sleep. So we have a series of actions that were all completed last night, right? If it is already understood when these actions took place, I wouldn't need to mention last night, right? So that further illustrates my point about mentioning the time, right? So yes, that's the first context to talk about completed actions. These actions can be individual action, it can be an individual action or a series of actions. Secondly, we use the past simple to talk about habits. So these are activities or actions that were performed frequently in the past, right? I always train at 5 a.m., right? Usain Bolt never woke up late. So what you would notice in this case is that in both examples, I would have utilized adverbs of frequency. In the first example, always, and the second example, never, because these convey that the actions occurred multiple times, right? Therefore, we call them habits. So these are the general uses of the past simple in English. We use them to talk about actions that have been completed and we use them to talk about habits. So based on the verbs that I would have highlighted, you already can see what the formation is going to be like, right? I did use some irregular verbs, but never mind. The majority of the verbs here are actually 1, 2, 3. Actually, it was 50-50, my bad. But yes. So now we are going to proceed to the formation. So to form the past simple of most verbs, you have to add ed to the base form of the verb, right? So you take the verb in its base form and you add ed, right? This is for most verbs. We played football yesterday. So obviously play is our verb and we add ed to make it, to form the past simple. Xavier performed last night. That comes from the verb perform. Now, before we continue, I'm sure you would be delighted to know that the formation applies to every subject, okay? So you don't have to worry your head about conjugating the verb to agree with the subject. Well, for the most part, there's only one exception, and we'll get to that. But every subject will carry the same form, right? So that's something that I'm sure you'll be delighted to know. So for most verbs, we add ed to the base form. Continuing. If the verb ends in y, the y is changed to I and then we add ed. For example, Chris studied for his exams. Study, ends in y, so we change y to I and we add ed. She copied the note. Copy ends in y, so we change it to I and we add ed. Katrina married her crush. Marry ends in y, we change it to I and we add ed. Right? So these are very important to note because when you're spelling, you will need to make these changes. Maybe when it comes to speaking, they may not be as crucial, but certainly when you write, you must make sure that you implement the spelling changes, okay? If the verb ends in E, then D is added. You know, at first we said that for most verbs you add ed to the base form. Well, if the verb already ends in E, we just add D, right? So they loved their mother. Love ends in E, we add D. The police moved the car. Same thing. I lived in Spain for 2 years. Yep. Ends in E, so we add D. All right. So we're going to continue our analysis of the rules when it comes to formation. So let's continue with the formation. So if the verb ends in CVC, CVC stands for consonant, vowel, consonant. The last letter is doubled and ed is added. So that will be the last consonant in the combination, right? She stopped the bus. Stop ends in TOP, consonant, vowel, consonant. Therefore, we double the last letter, which will be the final consonant, P, and we add ed. Thus, we get stopped, right? And if you realize there is a pronunciation, there's a difference in pronunciation. You don't say stopped or stopped, you say stopped. So it actually sounds like a T at the end, right? And you'll notice that when you form the past simple of some of these verbs, you're going to get a different pronunciation, right? That will be different to what you would expect, right? So she stopped the bus. The family planned a trip. So plan ends in LAN. Therefore, that is consonant, vowel, consonant. So we double the N and we have planned. Same thing here. Lucas mugged them. Mug ends in, mug is a 3-letter verb. So we have a consonant, vowel, consonant. So we double the G and we add ED. And mug means to attack, right? So Lucas mugged them. Moving along. Now if the verb ends in CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant, and the final consonant is X, W, or Y, the final consonant is not doubled. So if we have a word that ends in this particular structure or order, but the final consonant is X, W, or Y, we do not double it. So we just add ED, right? For example, they mixed the flavors. Mix carries the same structure, but it ends in X. So we do not double the final consonant. Same thing here. Messi played the game, right? LAY, right? We do not double the Y because it ends in Y. And the teacher showed the image to the students. Show ends in CVC, but we do not double the W, right? Excellent. So, let me let that vehicle pass. My apologies. Let's get to negation. How do we negate a verb, or rather a sentence, in the past simple, right? So we see all these different rules when it comes to the affirmative, because this is basically the affirmative, right? So we add ED, sometimes we add D, right? Or sometimes we even have to double the final consonant and add ED, right? So what do we do when we want to make a sentence negative? Well, so to make sentences negative, we place did not. So we use this combination did not before the infinitive of the verb. In other words, the base form, right? So this is the structure. Subject did not, verb in the infinitive, rest of the sentence, right? I did not wash the car. So our verb is wash. And of course, when I say infinitive, that is without the to, right? I did not wash the car. So I, the subject, did not. That would be the negation marker. Wash, you have the verb in the infinitive, right? You can't say I did not wash the car. No, I did not wash the car, right? And then you have the rest of the sentence, which would be the object in this case, right? So wash. If I wanted to make that and turn that into an affirmative sentence, I would say I washed the car. I would just add ed to washed because that is a regular verb, right? At least as far as spelling is concerned, that's a regular verb. I did not wash the car. Similarly, we did not create this problem. Create is our verb. As you see, we have the subject. Did not create, verb in its base form, this problem. Right? Good. If we wanted to put that in the affirmative, we would say we created this problem. Right? Because create ends in E, we would simply add D to make it and to form the affirmative, right? But there's an exception. When it comes to the verb to be, which is an irregular verb, right? The irregular is an irregular verb because it carries actually two forms that are irregular. Was and were. Was is used for singular nouns and were is used for plural nouns. But were is also used for the singular form of you. You say you were, not you was, you were. Right? And I. Well, no, sorry. I was. No, sorry. My bad. Right, I was thinking of a hypothetical situation. You know where you say, if I were? No, we're not talking about hypothetical situations. So we use were for plural subjects with the exception of you, which in this case would be singular, and was would be used for singular subjects, right? Now, with the verb to be, we place not after the conjugation. So she was not ready. You see, not goes after was, right? We don't say she, you don't use did not. No, that's different. If we wanted to make that affirmative, we would say she was ready. Okay? Similarly, the students were not at school. If we wanted to make that affirmative, we would say the students were at school. Right? Very good. So right then and there you see, and I should take this time to talk about some irregular verbs. So we have make becomes made, take becomes took, understand becomes understood. There are a lot of irregular verbs. You can actually search them online. I would not be able to mention all of the irregular verbs in this lesson because then this lesson would be 2 or 3 hours, okay? So yeah. So this is how we negate sentences in the past simple. Now we are going to conclude with questions. Okay, so we move on to questions. How do we form questions in the past simple? Well, we use did, right? In this case, it would be an auxiliary verb, right? So did is placed at the start of the sentence, followed by the subject and the infinitive of the verb. So this is a visual of the structure. Did, subject, infinitive of the verb, rest of the question, right? Did he eat his lunch? That would be an affirmative question. Did he eat his lunch? You see, we have did, the subject, eat, right? Which is the infinitive of the verb, well, of the main verb, his lunch. And eat would be an irregular verb because the past simple form would be ate, right? If we were to put that in the affirmative, we would say he ate his lunch, right? He ate his lunch. In negative, he did not eat his lunch, right? Did they start the race? Did, their subject, start, infinitive, the race, rest of the question. So this is the basic formula for creating affirmative questions and using the past simple, right? Or in the past simple. If it is negative, not is placed before the infinitive of the verb. So that's the only difference. If the question is negative, you simply put not before the infinitive of the verb. So did he not eat his lunch? So the not just precedes the verb. Did they not start the race? Yep, that's right. Some additional details. When we have questions that start with a question word on interrogative, words like how, where, when, why, etc., we put that question word at the start of the sentence, right? So the question word would appear before did, right? So how did he win that race? So you see the same format. Did he win that race? If you want to add an interrogative, we place it before did. How did he win that race? If we wanted to make that negative, we would say, how did he not win that race? You see? And when did this happen? Yep. So we add the interrogative before the question, before the question. Yeah. Okay. So this concludes our lesson on the past simple. I hope that you have enjoyed it. And of course, I hope that you have understood it. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one.